We interrupt this program with a developing story of monumental importance. Tonight, the economic reality that experts have warned about for decades is no longer a distant threat. It is here. The moment of reckoning has arrived. Washington's staggering $37 trillion national debt has officially triggered a global crisis of confidence. After weeks of frantic behind-the-scenes negotiations, talks on a new debt ceiling framework have collapsed entirely. Sources inside the Treasury confirm that the United States is now on the brink of a sovereign debt default, an event once considered unthinkable. In response, America's closest ally and largest trading partner has taken a drastic, unprecedented step. Moments ago, the Canadian government declared a full-scale trade and financial blackout on the United States. In a terse statement, the Prime Minister's office cited the need to insulate the Canadian economy from the severe and immediate contagion of the American fiscal crisis. Effective immediately, all land borders are sealed to commercial traffic. All financial transactions have been halted. The world's longest undefended border is, for all economic purposes, closed. The economic fallout has been instantaneous and catastrophic. Global markets are in a free fall. The Dow Jones futures plummeted thousands of points within seconds of the announcement, triggering automatic circuit breakers. The US dollar is collapsing against every major world currency. For millions of Americans, the value of their life savings, their 401ks, and their pensions is evaporating in real time. This isn't just about Wall Street, this is about Main Street and the very foundation of American prosperity. Tonight, a new chapter of uncertainty begins. The systems we've relied on for generations are breaking down. The questions are stark and urgent. How did we let it come to this? What happens tomorrow when the banks open, when supply chains break, when paychecks stop? And is there any path back from the brink? Stay with us as we bring you continuing coverage of this developing global emergency. For months, analysts warned that the U.S. debt spiral was unsustainable. Now, crossing the $37 trillion threshold has triggered a loss of confidence, both at home and abroad. In a move that has stunned the international community and sent financial markets into a tailspin, Canada's Prime Minister delivered a historic address from Parliament Hill. With a gravity befitting the moment, he announced a complete and total trade blackout with the United States, effective immediately. This isn't a targeted sanction or a limited dispute. It is a full-scale economic disengagement from Canada's largest trading partner. The flow of critical goods that form the very backbone of North American industry has been severed. The directive halts all exports of Canadian lumber, a key component of the American housing market. It stops the flow of over 3 million barrels of oil per day, a critical energy lifeline for the U.S. The steel and aluminum that feed American factories will no longer cross the border, and the vast agricultural bounty from Canada's heartland is now off limits. The economic impact is projected to be immediate and catastrophic, a self-inflicted wound Ottawa claims is necessary for long-term survival. Ottawa has been explicit about the reasons for this drastic measure. In a statement, the government cited a fundamental breakdown of fiscal responsibility in Washington. This is a direct response not only to what Canada calls punitive and illegal U.S. tariffs that have crippled key Canadian industries, but more critically, to Washington's perceived inability to control its spiraling national debt and stabilize its volatile financial system. The Prime Minister's office stated that continuing to integrate the Canadian economy with an increasingly unstable U.S. system presents an unacceptable existential risk to Canada's own sovereignty and economic well-being. The term blackout was chosen deliberately to convey the severity and finality of the action. An official government communiqué emphasized, "This is not a tariff to be negotiated. This is not a temporary suspension to be endured. It is a full stop, a quarantine." The message is clear. Canada is building an economic firewall. Trade will not resume on a piecemeal basis. It will only be restored when, in Ottawa's judgment, the United States has taken concrete, verifiable steps to regain its financial credibility on the world stage. Until then, the world's longest undefended border has become an economic iron curtain. The immediate fallout is already being felt, with supply chains seizing up and markets in freefall. Washington, seemingly caught by surprise by the sheer audacity of the move, has yet to issue a formal response. But as the trucks grind to a halt and the phones ring unanswered, one thing is certain: the global economic order has been irrevocably fractured, and the path forward is dangerously uncertain. Overnight, American manufacturers, energy providers, and food distributors have lost their closest partner. Factories in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania are already reporting shutdowns. And with oil and natural gas shipments frozen, American consumers could see energy costs double. Markets are in freefall. The Dow dropped thousands of points in minutes, bond yields spiked, and panic spread through trading floors. The message is simple. The U.S. debt crisis is no longer theoretical. In Washington, politicians are pointing fingers. Trump-backed Republicans blame weak policy. Democrats accuse Trump-era tariffs of pushing Canada too far. The result? Paralysis at the very moment America needs unity. Europe and Asia are watching closely, their capitals holding their collective breath. In Brussels, emergency sessions of the European Commission are underway. The initial shock has given way to a chilling realization. The bedrock of the global financial system, the United States Treasury bond, is being openly challenged. Germany, an export powerhouse whose economy is inextricably linked to global stability, has issued terse statements calling for calm, but behind the scenes, officials at the Bundesbank are running frantic simulations. What happens to the euro if the dollar enters a freefall? How do they protect the trillions in European pensions and investments tied to American markets? In Paris, calls for European strategic autonomy now sound like an urgent necessity, as the continent realizes its over-reliance on a partner that now appears dangerously volatile. Across the globe, the reaction in Asia is even more fraught with tension. Tokyo, a steadfast American ally and the largest foreign holder of U.S. debt, is in a state of quiet panic. Officials are caught in an impossible bind. Publicly, they must support Washington to prevent a market collapse, but privately, they must be considering how to de-risk their exposure without triggering the very panic they fear. But all eyes are on Beijing. As the second largest foreign creditor to the U.S., China holds a powerful hand. For years, they have sought to diminish American dominance. Canada's move presents them with a golden opportunity, yet it's one fraught with peril. A full-blown U.S. collapse would decimate the value of their own treasury holdings. So their official response is a carefully worded plea for responsibility and stability. But state-controlled media tells a different story, framing this as the inevitable decline of a debt-ridden empire. Intelligence sources suggest China is accelerating its long-term strategy, diversifying reserves and preparing the digital yuan for a post-dollar world. But this crisis of geopolitics and high finance is crashing down with brutal force on Main Street. Behind the staggering numbers are real people whose lives are being upended in real time. Along the 4,000-mile US-Canada border, a steel curtain has descended. Thousands of truck drivers are stranded in a logistical nightmare. They are the lifeblood of our supply chain, now sleeping in their cabs, watching their funds and their businesses evaporate with every passing hour. Inside our communities, the impact is just as stark. Families, already squeezed by inflation, now stare at increasingly sparse supermarket shelves. It's not just about rising grocery bills anymore, it's about availability. The fresh produce from Ontario, the lumber for construction, the essential components for manufacturing, they're all stuck. This paralysis is sending shockwaves through the American workforce. In states like Michigan and Ohio, the heart of the auto industry, assembly lines are grinding to a halt. A single missing part from a Canadian supplier can render a multi-billion-dollar factory useless. Workers who showed up for their shift on Monday were sent home without pay on Tuesday, with no indication of when or if they will be called back. Small businesses in border towns from Niagara Falls to Point Roberts have seen their revenues fall to zero overnight. This leads us to the terrifying central question: if Canada holds the line, and America can't find a way to stabilize its colossal $37 trillion national debt, could this be the first domino in a chain reaction that leads to the collapse of U.S. global dominance? The first domino has already fallen. Canada's trade blockade, a direct challenge to America's economic authority. The second domino is teetering right now: global confidence. If other major creditors like Japan or a coalition of European nations see Canada's defiance and begin to believe that U.S. debt is no longer the world's safest asset, they may start to sell their holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds. This would trigger the third domino, a catastrophic spike in U.S. interest rates. To attract new buyers for its debt, the U.S. would be forced to offer astronomically high returns, causing borrowing costs for the government, businesses, and everyday Americans to skyrocket. This leads to the fourth domino, a sovereign debt crisis. The U.S. government enters a death spiral, where interest payments on its debt consume the federal budget. The only options would be draconian austerity, or printing trillions of new dollars, triggering hyperinflation. Either path leads to the fifth and most dangerous domino: massive social and political unrest. An economy in ruins and a government unable to function is a recipe for chaos, and that is the precursor to the final domino: the end of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, the very foundation of American global power for 80 years. This is what's at stake. It's not just a trade dispute, it's a fight for the future of the global order. And so, the world watches as two crises collide. America's long-simmering debt crisis has finally boiled over, meeting the immovable object of Canada's boldest geopolitical move in a century. This trade blackout has shaken Washington to its core, forcing a reckoning that has been decades in the making. The White House is trapped. Does it make concessions to Ottawa, potentially signaling to the world that U.S. economic power can be successfully challenged? Or does it stand firm, escalating the economic war with its closest ally and risking the entire global financial system it purports to lead? We are witnessing a potential turning point in modern history, a moment future generations may study like the Suez Crisis or the fall of the Berlin Wall. The decisions made in the next few days in Washington, Ottawa, Beijing, and Brussels will define the economic landscape for the 21st century. We want to know what you think. What is the endgame here? Should the U.S. prioritize its relationship with Canada or its authority on the world stage? Leave your analysis in the comments below. Our team will be tracking every development, from the closed-door emergency meetings at the Federal Reserve to the frantic back-channel negotiations between the White House and Parliament Hill. To make sure you don't miss a single critical update, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. This story is far, far from over.